I found my husband's business trip, hotel booking, and showed up as room service. Hey everyone! Welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive into today's story, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing how far our viewers are from. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps me bring more stories like this to you. And don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts, reactions, or even guesses about what might happen next. Alright, now settle in and stay tuned, because today's story is full of suspense, twists, and emotions you won't want to miss. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32, a marketing consultant, and I've been married to Daniel for 6 years. Most people would say we had a picture-perfect marriage. I suppose that's why this feels so surreal. On the surface, we were happy. Weekend getaways, date nights, and Instagram-perfect selfies. But beneath that facade, cracks had begun to form, subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but growing wider with each passing day. Daniel travels a lot for work. Corporate consultant, he says. Meetings across the country, client dinners, and occasionally international trips. I never minded. In fact, I admired his dedication. But lately, something about his absences didn't feel right. The way he guarded his phone, the way he flinched when I casually glanced at his laptop screen, the faint scent of perfume lingering on his shirt, none of it added up. And it gnawed at me. Every fiber of my being told me that he was hiding something, but I couldn't yet prove it. It all started 2 weeks ago. I came home early from work, a rare treat, since my projects had been brutal that week. I had planned to surprise him with dinner, expecting to find him either pacing the living room in frustration over spreadsheets or lazily sprawled on the couch with a glass of wine. But the apartment was quiet, too quiet. And then I noticed the faint glow of his laptop still on, his chair pushed back, as if someone had been abruptly interrupted. Curiosity bubbled up. I moved closer, careful not to disturb anything, and that's when I saw it, a booking confirmation for a hotel, tucked neatly inside the inner pocket of his jacket. My heart stopped for a moment, as if my chest itself had forgotten to beat. Normally, he kept receipts and confirmations in our shared email, all under the company's name. But this one, it wasn't under the company's name. It wasn't even under his business alias. It was just Daniel. The check-in date was tomorrow night. Tomorrow. And the location wasn't some corporate hub or a city where he claimed to have a meeting. It was just a 20-minute drive from our apartment. My mind raced. Why would he need a hotel so close? And why keep it off our shared accounts? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt a cold, sinking certainty. Something was happening, something he didn't want me to know. I spent the rest of that night in a fog. I tried calling friends, distracting myself with work emails, scrolling mindlessly through social media. But every image of couples laughing or holding hands felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Every message from Daniel, a simple good night, seemed calculated, almost mocking. I stared at the booking details on my phone again, memorizing the hotel's name, the check-in time, the special requests, champagne, strawberries, a king-size bed for 2. I felt betrayed, yes, but there was something else, a strange mix of fear and determination. Fear of the unknown, but determination to confront it. I couldn't just sit at home, wringing my hands, letting the anxiety consume me. I had to know. The next day, I followed my instincts. I called the hotel, pretending to be a staff member from a local concierge service. I asked for confirmation of the reservation, innocently, politely. The receptionist confirmed it, noting his special request for champagne and strawberries, a subtle smirk in her tone when she mentioned it. That confirmation confirmed everything I had suspected. My mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. I remember pacing in our small kitchen, clenching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind. It's just business, Emily. Trust me. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Trust had become a fragile thing, easily shattered by small lies and hidden truths. I realized that waiting for him to explain himself would only give him the advantage, and I wasn't willing to give him that. As night fell, I made a plan. I wouldn't confront him at home. I wouldn't call or text him. Instead, I would go to the hotel. Not as Emily, the wife. Not as the betrayed woman. But as someone who needed answers. Someone who needed to see the truth with her own eyes. The preparation was painstaking. I couldn't just walk into a hotel and demand the answers. I needed a cover. I borrowed a black uniform from a friend who worked part-time as a server, tied my hair neatly into a bun, and practiced holding a tray in front of a mirror, trying to steady the trembling in my hands. I didn't want to lose control, not yet. Every detail mattered. Every gesture had to be precise. I had to be invisible, unassuming, until the moment I revealed myself. My heart thumped in my chest as I approached the hotel the next evening. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, and the cool night air did little to calm the storm inside me. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I was doing this. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. This was about clarity. This was about facing the truth, no matter how painful. As I entered the hotel lobby, I felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. Guests hustled past me, oblivious to the secret I carried with me. I slipped into the staff elevator, pressing the button for the 12th floor, my fingers tightening around the tray until I feared I might crush it. Every floor we passed felt like an eternity, the hum of the elevator echoing in my ears like the pounding of my own heartbeat. When the doors opened, I saw the hallway stretching before me, pristine and silent. Room 1209. Daniel's room. My pulse quickened, and for a moment, I questioned whether I should turn back. But I steadied myself. No, I thought. I needed answers. I needed to see this through. I knocked twice, soft enough to seem polite, firm enough to command attention. The seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. And then, the door opened. And what I saw made the blood drain from my face. It wasn't Daniel. I froze for a second when the door opened. My heart thudded violently against my ribcage, and I could feel my palms starting to sweat despite the cool night air. It wasn't Daniel who greeted me. A woman stood there, younger than me, perfectly styled, her hair gleaming under the hotel hallway lights, red lipstick accentuating her confident smile. She didn't even hesitate. "You can set it on the table, please," she said, her tone polite, but with that subtle hint of ownership over the space I felt I had once shared with my husband. For a split second, I considered leaving. Maybe this wasn't the right time. Maybe I should just back away and process my emotions at home. But no, too much had happened already. Too much trust had been broken. I straightened my back, took a deep breath, and reminded myself why I was here. I wasn't just Emily, Daniel's wife. I was a woman seeking the truth, and I wouldn't leave until I got it. I stepped inside, the tray balanced carefully in my hands, feeling every nerve in my body tingle with anticipation. The woman looked at me, startled by my presence, but said nothing. I silently set the tray down on the immaculate table by the bed. The strawberries glistened under the room's warm lighting, the champagne still chilled in its glass bottle. Every detail screamed luxury, indulgence, and deception. And then I heard the water running in the bathroom. My stomach twisted. Daniel's voice, calling out softly, echoed from behind the door. "Babe? Who's there?" "Babe." The word made me freeze in place. I had heard it countless times, whispered lovingly across candlelit dinners and late-night conversations. But now it felt like a dagger in my chest. That single word confirmed what I had feared for weeks. He wasn't alone. He had been lying to me, hiding behind empty excuses, and I had been blind. I kept my voice calm, almost controlled as I spoke. "Don't worry about me," I said, almost whispering. "Just enjoy dessert." The tray felt heavier in my hands now, but I set it down with deliberate care, letting every movement scream quiet defiance. The bathroom door opened slowly, and there he was, Daniel, wearing nothing but a towel, his eyes widening as they locked onto mine. The air between us thickened instantly, the tension palpable. His mouth opened, as if to say something, but no words came out at first. The silence was suffocating, each second stretching longer than the last. "Emily," he finally managed to choke out, his voice trembling, betraying the confidence he always carried at work. I stepped closer, carefully enough to avoid panicking either of us, but deliberately closing the space that once felt so comfortable. "Yes, Daniel." "It's me," I said softly, my voice calm, almost eerily composed. "I just thought I'd see how your business trip was going." The woman standing by the table gasped. Her eyes flicked between Daniel and me, realization dawning like a slow, cruel spotlight. Her face lost some of its confident glow, replaced by panic, embarrassment, and confusion. I could almost hear her heartbeat. Daniel opened his mouth again, searching for an explanation, a story that could undo the damage, but I didn't let him speak. "Not yet. Not now." I simply reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. The metal glinted under the warm lights of the room. I placed it carefully on the tray beside the strawberries, letting the gesture speak louder than any argument or tear. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Then the woman finally spoke, her voice shaky, almost accusing. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. The look in her eyes said it all. She understood. She knew. And Daniel, too, understood fully now. His confident, composed demeanor crumbled into panic and shame. I turned toward the door, deliberately slow, savoring the impact of every step. Every heartbeat in my chest felt like a drum of justice, every glance over my shoulder a reminder that I had taken control. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply walked out, leaving the tray, the ring, and the truth behind. But as I reached the elevator, the weight of everything hit me like a tidal wave. Betrayal, heartbreak, rage, disappointment, they all collided at once. I had seen him, up close, in a moment he thought was private, and I had witnessed the unmistakable proof of his lies. Yet amid the storm of emotions, there was clarity. I wasn't just hurt, I was empowered. I had the knowledge, and knowledge, I realized, was power. The ride down in the elevator was agonizingly slow. I could replay every detail in my mind. The woman's shocked expression, Daniel's pale face, the way he couldn't find words to defend himself. My mind wasn't consumed with revenge yet, though the seed had been planted. Right now, I focused on breathing, on keeping myself steady, on planning my next move carefully. One wrong step, and the entire plan could crumble. Back in the car, I sat in silence for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The city lights blurred as tears threatened to fall, but I refused them. I wasn't crying over betrayal anymore. I was planning. I was thinking. And slowly, a sense of control, long lost, began to settle in. I had faced the truth. Now it was time to decide what I would do with it. At home, everything seemed surreal. The apartment was quiet, almost mocking, as if it had absorbed the shock of what I had just uncovered. I placed my borrowed uniform on the chair, straightened the bedcovers, and made coffee, ordinary routines that somehow felt grounding. I needed clarity. I couldn't rush into decisions driven purely by anger. My emotions were intense, yes, but I had learned that calculated actions held far more weight than impulsive outbursts. I reflected on our years together, the moments that now felt like illusions. Every shared smile, every whispered promise, suddenly seemed tainted. How much of what I believed had been genuine, and how much had been a well-constructed lie? The questions haunted me, echoing through the apartment like ghosts of the past. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene at the hotel over and over. My mind crafted scenarios, imagined confrontations, weighed consequences. I wasn't just planning revenge, I was plotting a reclamation of my dignity, my life, and my peace of mind. By morning, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the blinds carried with them a sense of resolve. I had witnessed the betrayal firsthand. I had proof. And most importantly, I had taken the first step toward reclaiming control. Daniel had assumed he could hide, manipulate, and deceive. But he had underestimated me. I wasn't just his wife. I was Emily Carter, and I had never been someone to back down from the truth. The next steps would be careful, precise, and deliberate. I wasn't in a hurry. I had all the time in the world to ensure that the truth, the consequences, and my own recovery unfolded exactly as they should. But one thing was certain. The evening at the hotel had changed everything. It was no longer about suspicion, fear, or uncertainty. It was about action, empowerment, and the knowledge that sometimes the quietest moves strike the hardest. And so, as I prepared for the day ahead, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. I knew the confrontation, real, unavoidable, and inevitable, was coming. But I also knew that I was no longer a passive player in Daniel's life. I had stepped into the arena fully aware, fully awake, and fully determined to take back what was mine. Because some truths, once discovered, cannot be ignored. And some betrayals demand more than tears. They demand courage, planning, and a strength you didn't know you had. Tonight, I had taken the first step. And I would not falter. The next few days were a blur. I moved through life on autopilot, pretending to be calm at work, smiling when colleagues joked, all while my mind spun relentlessly with the memory of that hotel room. Daniel hadn't called. He hadn't sent a single message. I could almost feel the weight of his guilt pressing down from miles away. I wondered if he knew that I had seen everything, that I had taken in every detail, every betrayal. The thought made my chest tighten, but I refused to let panic or anger overtake me. I needed strategy. I needed precision. I decided I wouldn't wait for him to reach out. I needed to control the narrative, to reclaim my own power. That evening, I sat at our dining table, a notebook open in front of me, mapping out my plan. Every decision had to be deliberate. Every move calculated. I listed out what I knew, what I had seen, and what needed to happen next. My emotions threatened to spill over, but I swallowed them down, transforming anger into a sharpened focus. By nightfall, I was ready. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I would confront Daniel on my own terms. I called him, casually, as if nothing was wrong, and suggested that he come home, not for a discussion, but because I wanted to talk about something important. He hesitated, sensing something in my tone, but finally agreed. When he walked through the door that evening, he carried the usual faint scent of cologne, but this time, I noticed the hesitation in his step, the flicker of fear in his eyes. I greeted him politely, with a calmness that only served to magnify his unease. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady, "we need to talk." He opened his mouth, probably expecting an argument, a tearful scene, or maybe even a plea for forgiveness. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. I led him to the living room, sat down across from him, and waited. The silence stretched uncomfortably between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, careful. "Emily, I can explain." I raised a single hand, silencing him before he could start. "No, Daniel. You don't get to explain. You get to listen. And you get to understand the gravity of your choices." I told him everything, not in a shrill voice, not in tears, but with the quiet precision of someone who had already seen the truth. I described the hotel, the room, the woman, the tray, the strawberries, the champagne. I didn't embellish. I didn't exaggerate. I let the facts speak for themselves, knowing that the evidence of his own actions would speak louder than any angry accusation. Daniel's face went pale. His hands trembled slightly as he ran them through his hair. I saw the mask of control, so familiar in boardrooms and client meetings, crumble before my eyes. And as he stammered, searching desperately for words that wouldn't absolve him, I realized something crucial. This was no longer about hurt. This was about reclaiming myself. "You've lied to me," I said, my voice calm but firm, every word deliberate. Not just about a hotel reservation. About trust, about us, about what our marriage meant. "And you think a simple apology will fix it?" He shook his head frantically, desperation creeping into his voice. "Emily, I never meant for you to find out like this. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. It's complicated." I stood, moving closer until the distance between us was charged, electric. "Complicated?" I echoed, my voice sharper now, tinged with disbelief. "You think this is complicated? You've been sneaking around, betraying everything we built, and now it's complicated." The anger simmered beneath my calm exterior, but I didn't let it boil over. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, not the volume of my voice. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't just hurt, I was awake. I was aware. I was no longer the woman who trusted blindly. I paused, letting silence fill the room like a physical force. And then I pulled out my phone, showing him the messages I had saved, the hotel confirmation, even the picture of the tray I had snapped quietly before leaving the room. His eyes widened, disbelief giving way to shock. This was no longer hypothetical. This was tangible. Proof of betrayal he could no longer deny. "I trusted you," I said softly, almost whispering now, letting the gravity sink in. "And you broke that trust. Every promise, every plan, every memory we shared, it's tainted now. Do you understand that?" He nodded slowly, a tremor in his hands, his lips pressed together to hold back whatever excuses he was forming. But I wasn't finished. I couldn't let him off easy. "I'm not going to humiliate you. I'm not going to scream at you or beg you to explain. I've already seen the truth. And you're going to live with the consequences, not because I want revenge, but because this is the reality you created." Daniel's eyes filled with tears, a rare vulnerability that I had never seen before. And yet, I felt no triumph. There was no satisfaction in witnessing his fear or shame. There was only clarity. I knew exactly what had to happen next. I needed to protect myself, my dignity, and my future. I walked past him and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights, as if drawing strength from the world outside. He followed cautiously, unsure of what I intended to do. I didn't glance back at him. I simply spoke, my voice steady, controlled, but heavy with emotion. "You are going to tell me everything, and I mean everything, before we make any decisions about what comes next. No lies, no half-truths, no excuses. Just the truth. Because I need to understand exactly who I've been married to for the past 6 years." He swallowed hard, a broken man in the face of the life he thought he controlled. "Emily." I shook my head slowly. "Save it. I don't need your excuses. I need honesty. And if you can't give me that, then we're done. Plain and simple." The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the city outside, the distant chatter of late-night traffic, and the rapid beating of our hearts. I could feel the tension radiating between us, thick and suffocating, but I didn't flinch. I was done being a passive player in his life. I had seen the truth. And now I was steering the narrative. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Daniel's voice grew hoarse as he tried to explain himself, each word faltering, each sentence betraying more guilt than clarity. I listened, taking in every detail, mentally cataloging every lie, every half-truth, every misstep. My mind wasn't clouded by emotion. It was clear, sharp, focused on what needed to happen next. By the time he finally stopped, exhausted and trembling, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to beg him to stay. I wasn't going to plead for his remorse. I was going to reclaim my life, one calculated step at a time. I had already begun to take back control, and nothing he said or did could reverse that. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange mixture of sadness, anger, and liberation. The confrontation had been painful, yes, but it had also been empowering. I had faced the truth, looked betrayal in the eye, and refused to crumble under it. And though the road ahead would be difficult, I knew one thing for certain. I would not let this define me. I would not let his actions dictate my future. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of the day settle, and whispered to myself, "Emily Carter doesn't break. She adapts, she survives, and she thrives." And Daniel, he's about to learn that the hard way. The following week felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. I woke up early every day, went through my usual routines, but nothing felt normal. Every glance at the empty side of the bed reminded me of the betrayal I had uncovered. Yet amid the grief and anger, I felt a strange clarity, a sharp focus that guided every decision I made. I began with the logistics. Daniel had assumed he could continue living as if nothing had happened. But I refused to allow that. Every financial account, every shared asset, every trace of his assumed control was meticulously reviewed. I wasn't acting on impulse. I was acting strategically. I made calls to our bank, arranged meetings with legal advisors, and documented every piece of evidence from the hotel, the reservation, the photos I had secretly taken, even the champagne and strawberries receipt. Each detail was another layer in the web I was weaving, a web that Daniel could no longer escape. He tried to reach me, of course. I could see it in the missed calls and texts, desperate, pleading, filled with vague promises that he would explain himself, that he would make amends. I didn't respond. Not yet. If he wanted to salvage anything, he needed to understand the magnitude of what he had done. The more he reached out, the more I realized that he had underestimated me, that he had assumed I would cry, beg, or forgive without question. I spent the next few days quietly preparing for the next confrontation, not one filled with yelling or tears, but a calculated, undeniable presentation of truth. I contacted the woman from the hotel as well, anonymously, ensuring that HR at his company would receive proof of her involvement. Daniel had made a series of mistakes, and now every one of them would be documented, recorded, and revealed. When the day came for him to finally face the consequences, I invited him to our apartment, our shared home, once a place of warmth, now a stage for judgment. He arrived, visibly nervous, avoiding my gaze as he stepped inside. The confidence he once carried seemed to have evaporated entirely, replaced by uncertainty and fear. I led him to the living room, seating him across from me, and laid out everything. I presented the evidence systematically, deliberately, letting him absorb every detail. Photos, receipts, screenshots, each item a blow that chipped away at his defenses. The woman's role, the hotel booking, the tray, the special requests, nothing was left unexplained. I watched as realization dawned on him, watched as panic and guilt took over the facade he had maintained for so long. "You lied," I said, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Not just to me, but to everyone. And you assumed you could hide it. You assumed I would remain blind. But I've seen everything, Daniel. And now the truth is undeniable." He tried to speak, but I silenced him with a gesture, letting the weight of his actions hang in the room like a tangible force. I wanted him to understand fully, to feel the consequences of the decisions he had made. This wasn't just about betrayal in a marriage. It was about trust shattered, promises broken, and a life disrupted. Then came the part that mattered most, the reclaiming of control. I had spent nights thinking about this moment, crafting it carefully, ensuring that it would assert my independence and autonomy. I explained to him that the divorce process had already begun, that our shared assets would be separated, with the evidence I had collected guaranteeing that he could not manipulate or deceive the proceedings, that our marriage, once built on shared dreams and trust, would end on terms that ensured accountability. His face went pale as he realized that every attempt at charm, every excuse, every manipulation had failed. I wasn't a passive participant anymore. I wasn't someone who could be gaslit or silenced. I had transformed the betrayal into power, and I intended to use it wisely. But it wasn't enough to just remove him from my life. I wanted him to confront the reality he had created, to face the repercussions of his choices fully. I had contacted his company anonymously, providing them with evidence of inappropriate behavior and breaches of conduct. Within days, HR began an internal investigation that he could neither deny nor deflect. The woman he thought he could manipulate had been revealed, the hotel documents exposed, and his professional reputation began to crumble. Yet, even as the consequences took effect externally, I felt a strange liberation internally. The anger, the heartbreak, the betrayal, all of it was still present, yes, but tempered with clarity and strength. I realized that true power didn't come from revenge alone. It came from reclaiming yourself, standing firm in the truth, and refusing to be victimized further. In the quiet moments that followed, I reflected on what I had learned. Trust is fragile, yes, but so is deception. Lies can unravel, and betrayal has a way of exposing itself, no matter how carefully it's hidden. And when it does, the one who has been wronged has a choice, to collapse under the weight or to rise, reclaiming dignity and control. I had chosen the latter. As Daniel confronted the reality of his life crumbling, his job jeopardized, his reputation damaged, and his marriage irrevocably broken, I felt a bittersweet satisfaction. Not satisfaction in cruelty, but satisfaction in justice. He had made choices, now he would live with them. And I, Emily Carter, would move forward with my life, unbroken, stronger, and wiser. The process wasn't instantaneous. There were legal meetings, financial negotiations, and emotional reckonings. But throughout it all, I maintained a calm, deliberate demeanor. Every interaction, every decision, every response was a reminder that I was no longer someone who could be manipulated or betrayed with impunity. I had faced the storm, and I had emerged intact, empowered, and in control. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the city lights reflect off the buildings, I realized how far I had come. The apartment, once a place of comfort now tinged with pain, had become a symbol of my resilience. I had walked through betrayal, faced the uncomfortable truths, and emerged not just unscathed but transformed. I thought about the woman, the hotel, and Daniel, about the web of deception that had ensnared our lives. But instead of bitterness, I felt a calm resolve. Life had tested me, yes, but I had passed. I had taken control of the narrative, and in doing so, I had reclaimed not just my dignity, but my future. The final steps were simple but symbolic. I gathered the remaining personal items of Daniel's from our home, packed them neatly, and arranged for their delivery to him. I didn't yell, I didn't throw objects, I didn't dramatize the moment. I simply acted with quiet precision, demonstrating that the real power lay in control, not chaos. That night, alone in the apartment, I allowed myself to feel, not sorrow, not rage, but relief. The storm had passed. The confrontation had ended. And I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-aware than ever before. I had faced betrayal head-on and refused to be defined by it. As I prepared for bed, I whispered to myself, a quiet mantra of empowerment: Emily Carter doesn't break. She adapts, she survives, and she thrives. And anyone who underestimates her will soon learn that the consequences of betrayal are theirs alone to bear. By the time sleep finally claimed me, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The past week had been a crucible of emotion, tension, and revelation. But I had endured it all. I had navigated betrayal with intelligence, confronted deception with courage, and reclaimed my life with dignity. The chapters of my life had shifted irrevocably, and though the scars would remain, they were badges of survival, resilience, and strength. Tomorrow, I would wake up not as a victim of deceit, but as a woman who had faced the storm and emerged victorious. The world outside might not know the battles I had fought, the truths I had uncovered, or the courage it had taken to confront betrayal. But I knew. And that knowledge, that clarity, that empowerment was mine and mine alone. Wow, what a roller coaster, right? I don't know about you, but Emily's story left me on the edge of my seat. I have to ask, if you were in her shoes, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing your reactions. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps me bring more suspenseful, emotional stories your way. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because I have so many more shocking, twist-filled stories coming soon. Thank you for watching and staying till the end. You don't want to miss what's next. I'll see you in the next story.